Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Claire Kim, your MC for today's lecture. It's my great pleasure and privilege to welcome you all to the 92nd Societas Koreana lecture meeting. And I really appreciate your attendance under these heavy rainy seasons. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to welcome Professor Gooyong, who is going to give us an insightful lecture titled BTS Pandemic Hits and Their Discontents, Reconsiderations on Neoliberal Hegemony in K-pop Industry. Before we begin, I'd like to briefly introduce Professor Kim. He holds doctoral degree in Cultural Media Studies from UCLA and is an Associate Professor of Communication Arts at Cheyney University of Pennsylvania. His research includes diverse area of media, cultural politics, and economic critical studies. Also, he recently published a book titled From Factory Girls to K-pop Idol Girls, Cultural Politics of Developmentalism, Patriarchy, and Neoliberalism in South Korean Popular Music Industry. Without further delay, please welcome Professor Gooyong with a warm round of applause.
Thank you, Director Cho, for your heartfelt introduction and remarks, and MC Kim for your delightful introduction too. Before I begin, let me just share my sincere gratitude to Ms. Kang Young-mi of the Academy of Korean Studies for her dedicated coordination for this event. I humbly delighted for that. Before I begin, I would like to make some disclaimers. First of all, arriving in this venue, I watched BTS videos for about 30 minutes. But let me just confess, that's the biggest amount of time that I spent to watch this video. And it was really pleasurable and energizing. The reason I say that is I'm sure many of you know much better than the group BTS than I do. Why do I say that? I would like to just perfectly honest with you. I'm an expert about the BTS for their all the accolades, practices, all the their artistic ingenuity, things like that. I'm here to share my opinion, which is quite different from the mainstream scholars. So far, these astronomical successes of BTS on the globe, either Korean studies scholars or the foreign scholars, they have focused on explaining, describing, or analyzing what made BTS so successful. So so far, most of the scholarship endeavor has focused on some kind of celebratory, because there's never been this successful case in the realm of popular culture, popular music to be specific, on the globe. If you remember the global pop stars like Michael Jackson, Queen, Beatles, you name it, they are all from Western, so to speak, hegemon, popular culture hegemon. So going back to what the current scholars has focus on is, they try to mention how this, so to speak, nobody in the global popular music market. Less than 10 years ago, it was nobody. BTS was nobody. And suddenly they became the biggest, the most accomplished, the popular singer in the world to date. I mean, right before the pandemic songs, we mentioned, what I mean by pandemic songs, there are 3 songs that BTS released during the pandemic season. Dynamite, August 2020, Butter, May 2021, and the Permission to Dance, June 2021. I leave for them the BTS pandemic hits. So right before BTS's pandemic hits, people, experts, or journalists, or just ordinary people mentioned that, BTS would be next beaters. But now, 2 years after that, I would say BTS has beaten beaters in terms of all the record sales and all the defense engagement, things like that. So far, scholars have focused on how and why. That goes back to my question. Their understanding by describing, by understanding, by celebrating their success, we have missed very important things to remember. Once again, to begin with, BTS, they've done a lot of good things. All the Korean media, all the journalists, they say that BTS is known for their beneficial or good influence to audiences or anyone they care. But let me just perfectly clear with you. BTS is not a philanthropist, right? They are entertainers. They are the entertainers as part of culture industry that tries to make money out of producing those popular culture. So we have to be really, really sure about that. If we don't have that in mind strong, then of course I don't disagree or I don't want to disregard any good things about BTS. But what I want to do is maybe we have to be less overly celebratory and take a step back to understand the BTS phenomenon more critically, or at least more rationally. So my talk will be on, I would say, two things, if not three. The most important thing is the notion of hegemony. The reason why I say hegemony is the most recent academic literature about the BTS, mainly two papers written by Jo Kim, published by one of the most renowned journal in the field of communication media. She declared BTS has achieved counter-hegemony. And her claim was nothing new. Many scholars before her declared that BTS has been really, really successful, posing a totally new game of the popular culture in the industry, because BTS is the biggest, the most successful group in the world, right? So hegemony, I don't really want to do lecturing about all those notions like hegemony, because you are the only diplomatic dignitaries. Everything you do is all about hegemony, practicing hegemony, right? But hegemony, something that we really have to understand what hegemony is. Hegemony is basically, it goes back to the Marxist understanding of the society. The society is composed of ruling group, whether it's capitalist or the political hegemon or anything else, and the oppressed, the masses. So hegemony, against the orthodox Marxist worldview, hegemony tries to get consent from the people so that the establishment, the ruling group, can maintain the status quo. So according to Antonio Gramsci, the hegemony is war of positions, war of perspectives, war of worldviews. So if you want to keep your hegemony, if you want to keep your establishment, you have to give something for the people to agree with you. You have to give something for the people to consent with you. If you don't have that, no matter how much military power you have, your power cannot sustain. So that's why the hegemony is the most important thing. So since hegemony is war of positions, hegemony is war of worldviews and the understanding. So if you have dominant hegemony, then you have counter-hegemony, because you have different positionality. So going back to my personal story, today in the morning before I come, I have two children, a 13-year-old girl and 10-year-old boy. My son wanted to go out, raining, heavy. And I asked my son, why do you want to go out? It's raining. I don't want to be soaked like Dr. Cho. And my son said, oh, it's not as humid, it's not as hot. And you can take a shower and you can have stream at the same time. So he has his own hegemony. I have my own hegemony. But mine is dominant because I have power. But he doesn't. But still, I cannot just say no to them, to him specifically. I have to persuade why you should stay inside. So hegemony works like that. But the current research talks about the main reasons of BTS success came from BTS poses counter-hegemony to dominant US popular culture. So my question is that really so? Is it really the case that BTS poses counter-hegemony to US dominant popular culture? So my talk is about that. Before I go into further, let me just say two more things. Number one, the notion of neoliberalism and the notion of culture industry. The culture industry is basically you make money by selling the culture. Nowadays is basic common sense. It's more, it's a desirable, and everyone is going for that way. Because everyone knows Hollywood makes tons of money and K-pop industry makes a lot of money. But the idea of selling the culture was not the norm, common sense, at least 30 years back. So the culture industry treats the culture, the way we think, the way we behave, the way we live, as something like we buy, like the computers, the microphones, or the jacket. So that's a very, very tricky situation. So in other words, as far as the culture industry, K-pop, labels and many other the culture industry entities, as far as they think they can possibly make money, they can do anything. And that's a very, very important and very, very dangerous thing to happen. So let me go. Let me just explain why that's the case in a bit. The other one, neoliberalism. So neoliberalism is another of the jargons that's been used too much without defining what it is. That creates a lot of confusion. That creates a lot of headaches. But what I mean by the neoliberalism is not just deregulating the government policies, things like that. It's not that. The neoliberalism is grand transformation of society into the market. So in other words, previously, neoliberalism means new liberalism, right? Neo means new, something new. So that means in order for you to understand what neoliberalism properly, then you have to understand what liberalism is. So neoliberalism, we say classical liberalism, means there was a good demarcation between the realm of the market, the place you sell by, such as commodities, okay, food, the cars, clothes, everything we make for make money, right? To make money. But in classical liberalism, there was a good demarcation. There was a good a line you cannot cross. In other words, there was something you can sell and buy, and something you can never sell and buy. So those things, so that was a classic notion of what liberalism is, but neoliberalism, I mean, far more than deregulating the government policies, neoliberalism is those demarcation between the market and non-market has been erased. So it tries to make the society in its entirety into grand marketplace. So what I mean, what I do focus in what K-pop industry does and Hallyu does is they have incorporated what's previously unmarketable into a commodity. So it's a grand encroachment of market into the field that was not in the realm of market. So with that, I would like to proceed my talk today. I have ambassador of Israel that he will more happy to see this quote from T.W. Adorno. Let me just read it. To write poetry after Auschwitz is barbaric. So basically, the Adorno is one of the biggest scholars of the critical studies, which I've been, based on. I'm a critical scholar by training and by my research and my teaching. So after Auschwitz, all the modern rationality and all the humanistic development, the science and technology, was turned into decimating a group of people. So for Adorno, once you see all the human ingenuity, rationality, science and technological development turn into against humanity, we cannot say anything positive about humanity. What Adorno says is he doesn't negate any hope for humanity. It's not that. What Adorno wants to do is you really have to be critical what you are saying. What your technological and scientific and technological knowledge you want to put into use. So the reason why I could use this quote is, for me, after a pandemic, after COVID-19 pandemic, you cannot say something positive, something happy, something uplifting, unless you get the bottom of the crisis. So my focus about the BTS's pandemic hit is, so this is my crux of my argument. So BTS, 3 songs about the BTS pandemic hits. They say all about the good things. You gotta be happy, you gotta be positive, you gotta be optimistic, you gotta get ready for the war, wait is over, everything good, everything you want to hear, right? But for me, are we ready to say that? Did you get the bottom of the crisis? Once the crisis, there must be a cause and effect. Once there's a crisis, there's the people who get the benefit of the crisis. There are people who get the victim of that, right? So then, before we say, oh, it's over, before we say, oh, we gotta be hopeful, before we say we gotta be positive and optimistic, did we do our job? Which is to understand what the crisis is, where it came from, what caused it, things like that. But my argument here for today's talk is we haven't. Like all the establishment, like all the power structures tries to do, once there's this crisis, the establishment tries to, shrug under the carpet. They try to move things on without changing anything structurally. If the structure that causes the crisis after crisis, if we don't amend the structural condition that causes the crisis, even though we go over this particular crisis, next thing will come. So under neoliberalism, under, so to speak, late capitalistic establishment, dealing with crisis is just basically a rite of passage. It's kind of a common thing. So my next quote is coming from bell hooks. To truly be free, we must choose beyond simply surviving adversity. We must dare to create lives of sustained, optimal well-being and joy. So if BTS is all about giving you hope, if BTS is giving you all about optimistic and joy, and did they give you a sense of getting the bottom of it, getting the bottom of the crisis, so that you can have sustained sense of joy and enjoyable life. But my claim, my verdict is no. They just do it because people need it. Simply because people need it, that's not a good thing, always. There must be something to be addressed before you give them something to be happy. If there's a crisis, if there's a problem, you have to get the bottom of it so that you can stop the same, if not the same, the similar problem from happening again. But do we have those kind of critical kind of understanding of where we are, what we have in this popular culture? Maybe you say, I may be too harsh on BTS. Like I mentioned, they are not philanthropists. They are not the politicians. They are not the, like you, high government dignitaries who can propose policies and who can change the course of governmental actions, things like that. But let me be perfectly honest with you, no offense to you, no disrespect to you, I would say BTS is far more popular. BTS is far more influential, far more basically, powerful is the only word I can say. Far more powerful than you. Did I offend you? Maybe not. Sorry about that, but that's true. Before I begin this lecture, I told you that many of you, if not all of you, know far better than me about BTS, specifically their fan base, ARMY. You know all the good things ARMY has done. So that means the BTS is not just entertainer. They are far more than that. They have huge group of followers. They can exert far more power than anyone could possibly imagine. So that means my training, my research, my teaching is on the popular culture. It's the most powerful, most influential, the most pervasive tools of making something natural, making something desirable, making something basically, you want. Isn't it something you do in the field of diplomacy and in the field of the politics, right? So that's why celebrities, the global world stars like BTS, they are far more, they are basically what they do is what politicians do. So then we really have to be critical. We really have to be really well-rounded what they do. Because even though they don't intend, some celebrities intend, they exert a lot of power. Culturally, socially, politically, and by definition, ideologically. So everyone saw the BTS videos before I began my talking. So this is the screenshot from the last installment of BTS's pandemic hit, the Permission to Dance. So here, the wait is over. It's a big, bright, and colorful, and basically energizing catchphrase there. Everything that BTS done is bright, positive, hopeful, optimistic, and energizing, because they claim to be, giving people something to rely on, something to, to be hopeful, and they are proud of being the benevolent, the influence. The main sentimentality, the main feeling, everything about, especially pandemic videos are, everything's bright. It's carefree, perfect world, perfect utopia that you don't have anything to worry about. So my question begins there. Whose interest, whose outlook, whose perspective do you see from there? Is it the perspective of the masses who are dealing with all the deteriorating living conditions under the pandemic, conjunction with neoliberal precarity and crisis? Well, whose interest is that? Of course, people need something to be uplifted, that's for sure. But is that something they really need to sustain their life so that they can enjoy something hopeful, structurally, institutionally, rather than this ephemeral or fleeting sense of feeling good for the duration of this few minutes of music video. So whose interest? Once again, going back to the notion of hegemony, hegemony is a war of worldview, war of perspective. So race is over, you don't have to worry about anything. All you have to do is just keep yourself happy and optimistic and hopeful. Whose perspective for that? Whose interest does the video say that? So you have to, say in the United States, you have to work at least 2 shifts to maintain your family. Okay? And you have to go, say, I mean, the employment market in the US or anywhere in the world whose main system of the political economy operation is neoliberalism, you don't have any well-paying permanent job with pension benefits, things like that, right? You just go. Just above the minimum wage. And in that kind of situation, can you be happy working in a restaurant as a janitor, or a waitress, or the mail delivery man, or the security guard? And the old people you see in the video, they are all happy, dancing. It's like they are in the realm of utopia. They don't have anything to worry about. Are they really living their life like that? Whose interest this video gives you? That's my, when I first watched this video, I was, to be perfectly honest with you, I was really, really angry. I was really, really pissed off. Oh, now BTS, I mean, with amassing all the global successes, and in the really critical time, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, all they say is just don't worry, just be happy, and when it's over, you just go out and do enjoy your work, normal life. I mean, so the Permission Dance was released June last year. And when this video was released in the US, I mean, the youngsters, like my daughter's age and even the college the students, they just say, oh, you don't have to really about a thing. And soon afterwards, we have Omicron. So it was really, really the perfect timing that, so everything the BTS says in this video was crushed in a matter of few months. So going back to my original argument, the BTS is the quintessential part of culture industry that tries to do anything they deem, any probability, anything whatsoever. So when they made the debut, June 2013, they were underdog because they were latecomer to the industry, and their handling agency was not well off in terms of financial and all the resources to make the group well known. So because I mean, at the time, of course the members were talented. Obviously, they were able to sing, they were able to write a song, and they were able to dance. They had talent. But what I'm talking about is, I'm not talking about the individual members. I'm talking about BTS as an industry, the entity in the industry. How the concept, how the message, how the visuality, how everything about BTS has been carefully planned out, carefully prepared, carefully and strategically promoted and sustained by the industry. So I would like to give you a warning that I don't have any objection to what BTS as individual members try to do. What I'm saying is, I'm not talking about them as individuals, but I'm talking about them as a part of the industry. So if you look at the picture on the left upside, this is the visual when they promoted, when they made a debut, June 2013. They try to promote the message of rebellion. They try to talk about, agonies of teenagers go through, like a school, things like that. That is nothing new in the games of popular culture. If you know anything about hip hop, Hip hop is all about political statement of the African American, the people in New York City in 1960s and 1970s. And if you look at the Korean popular culture history, Societas boys who made a smashing influence in K-pop industry history per se, they promoted sense of rebellion, sense of problem, sense of social issue as their signature market positionality. So BTS follow, so to speak, rule of the game. So if you wanna make a dent in the given industry, you have to give something strong. You have to make yourself different, distinguished. And how do you do that? You try to make a good statement. Look at us, we are different. We are not talking about loves and all the sugar-coated, the bubble poppy, the love songs. We are talking about your problems. We are talking about your issues. I'm here because I can tell you because I go through that same problem as an underdog in the industry. And if you look at the celebrations of BTS, BTS is known for writing their lyrics, sometimes songs. I'm not sure how much they do, but so everyone was told that BTS's message has authenticity, originality. They write songs based upon their experience. So if the BTS's popularity, one of the biggest reasons behind their popularity came from the authenticity. The messages they promote came from their own experience of underdog, experience of being a problematic, youth in South Korean society. So I call reciprocity. It's not just the idol gives something the audience would like to hear, but it is just from the idol's own experiences. So for that reciprocity between idol's experience and the audience's experience, they can bond together, because the main audience for the idol music, they are the teenagers, specifically female teenagers. So if teenagers feel authenticity, originality, something sincerity from the idol, they can relate. And once they can relate, they can give all the ideas, comments, and suggestions to the idol. Why don't you talk about this? Because this is something that we are dealing with as a matter of something the biggest. So once the BTS established reciprocity based upon their experience with the audience, I mean they keep getting all the feedback, suggestions, comments from the audience. And they gave a good sense of sincerity. So from the perspective of the female audience, basically in the social hierarchy of patriarchal capitalism, the female teenagers are nobody, right? Second-class citizens, so to speak. Their parents and their teachers don't really care for them. They don't really listen to them. But you have an idol who has similar experience, similar difficulty. Someone, they can understand what you are going through, and they understand, and not only they understand, they listen to you. They incorporate something you suggest. And next time, when next song they release, the story that you suggest is incorporated and perfectly groomed and polished and sophisticated and became a song. How can you feel about that? You feel really accomplished, right? So with that, you have a lot of reciprocity. And then once you invest all those affective and all those emotional labor to spread the word of good things about the idol, and try to convey, basically teach what others think about BTS, what others don't know about BTS. They try to spread good things about BTS, and the BTS's fan base has been the driving force of all those media attention. It's not came from BTS per se. It came from its fan base, army. So another thing that I want to talk about is once BTS established those solid fan base, the fan would do something they think BTS should have, which is attention and award, getting award, all the recognition. The more they see BTS receive all those recognition, the more fans will get a sense of accomplishment. They will have vicarious sense of accomplishment. You spend money and time, you give all the effort and labor to make your star look great, bigger, and accomplished. The more they do that, the more you feel accomplished. So that's basically what BTS has made this mega global hit. Then, how did BTS give its fan base something they like? It's basically BTS and its handling agency has used BTS fan base as epicenter of R&D. R&D is acronym of research and development. So basically, going back to the notion of culture industry, the culture industry deals with culture as a commodity. So when you want to make a car, it's a huge investment, right? So that means you're not gonna make something existing. You're not gonna make something the consumers don't like. So you do a lot of research, market research, what people want, what people need. And once you have that, you have to develop how to make it happen by making a car look in this way or the other way. That is the biggest kind of hurdle for anyone who works for culture industry. But for BTS, they have a greatest resource to rely on. Who is that? The fan base. Fans give BTS what they want, what they need, how they want, and why they want. And then once BTS knows that, what their fan base want to have, next thing is to make it perfect. That's it. So going back to pandemic hits, probably the fans want to have something feel good because they are basically stressed out. They are just basically pissed off. They are basically depressed. So based upon their R&D, using army as an epicenter of R&D, they came up with an idea, a message they can pass and for sure can say. So that's how once they amass kind of the critical mass of popularity that came from 2016 at the AMA ceremony. Once they hit the critical point, threshold point, and after that, what they have to do is basically listen to their fans and try to incorporate the messages, making a good balance, not to alienate them, giving them something they want, and not to basically put their industry into problematic situation. So something that happened was, so back in 2019-20 in the US, we had a lot of social unrest. We call it Black Lives Matter movement. And everyone knows that BTS made a $1 million donation with a statement. And with that, Army made a matching fund for $1 million, and then made a huge headline for South Korean mass media. That was a good thing, but for me, honestly, I didn't see any sincerity coming from BTS. Why do I say that? If you look at their statement, it doesn't say anything at all. All they say was they are against all the hatred, all the discrimination, anything like that. That doesn't say anything at all. It doesn't say anything about the problem. It doesn't say anything about the source of the problem, how it should be addressed, nothing. So, why did BTS do that? Yes, it was because it's fan-base, Army. If you look at the composition of the demographic composition of Army, they are mainly, from marginalized or the oppressed class. Immigrants, African Americans, or Latinos, Asians, mainly girls. Those people, because they are in those kind of oppressed personality, they have a better sensitivity all those social injustice and the problems. So the Army made a sizable amounts of participation in Black Lives Matter movement, and they communicate. And they ask BTS, because they know BTS has a lot of huge influence. They asked BTS, why don't you make a move for our cause? But once again, BTS is a part of the industry. If you know any popular culture industry, they would never side with a political faction, a political party, because the political game is very, very changeable. You cannot rely on a group of political party one day, because you never know what's going to happen next day, right? So especially K-pop industry, Hallyu industry, they have done their best to distance themselves from the political groups. But BTS could not help, because if they don't take any action, they know they will alienate their fan base. If they don't take any action about the Black Lives Matter movement and all the brand value, which is socially conscious marketing, socially conscious band, they would lose its brand authenticity. So that's why, inadvertently, they made a monetary donation of $1 million and made a tepid statement. It was a really, really strategy and clever business decision. So with that, even though whether it has authenticity or sincerity or not, the BTS move itself was well received, even though it was, cold calculation of the industry. So my argument is, BTS has been doing great of socially conscious marketing. So socially conscious marketing is, a brand ostensibly advocates for something good, like a Coke against global poverty back in 1971. Tom's sneakers against the global poverty back in 10 years ago or so. Then the BTS, as the part of the industry, the brand value is socially conscious either. They want to deal with something the minors go through. That is their brand identity from the beginning, and they have to keep it, because all their previous accomplishment, all their previous activities have based upon that brand identity. Then, my question was, did BTS's pandemic songs, 3 songs, do the similar thing, if not the same thing, that what they have claimed doing? Socially conscious branding. For me, no. There are many people who say that passing the stage of back in right before pandemic, BTS has achieved almost every award except for the Grammy. And that once they failed to get the Grammy Award 2019, they declare, would like to get it. They want to be a top dog. And if you look at the identities, or the way how the BTS songs sound, the pandemic songs are quite different from songs before. Dynamite was the first BTS song who topped Billboard 100, the first place. It was sung in English. It was written and produced all English-speaking talents. All three pandemic songs catered to appeal Western audiences, deploying all the composers, lyricists, and all the choreographers, all the visuals, locations. BTS was determined to be the top dog of the global popular song industry. So they changed everything: lyrics, sound, choreography, the visual, the props, everything. For me, at least three pandemic songs: Dynamite, Butter, and the Permission to Dance. They are basically conforming to hegemonic American popular culture. And then many of you who watched the choreography of Permission to Dance, especially Permission to Dance and Dynamite, it's all about tribute to Michael Jackson. The dance, tunes, song, the way they sing the song, the style. It's basically tribute to Michael Jackson. So going back to the notion of hegemony, let me just keep everything, because you have the package. Inside of the package, there's a copy of my PPT, so you can go back to what I'm talking about later. But let me just convey my key point by giving you this picture. In terms of the hegemony, so as opposed to the current the scholars say BTS proposes counter hegemony to American culture. For me, there's nothing about counter hegemony, because at least three pandemic songs, all those musical components came from American canonical popular culture, especially Michael Jackson. Especially its message, it talks about everything neoliberal popular culture has proposed, something such as to be positive and happy, optimistic, things like that. So if you pay attention to how popular culture, especially TV advertisement and soap operas and movie, has given you since 2001 terrorist attack and 2008 financial meltdown, you see a lot of a theme of something happy, something optimistic. So if you want to maintain your establishment, there's a problem. But if you want to solve the problem structurally, permanently, you have to lose your interest. But if you don't want to lose your interest, because you are the part of the status quo, you are the part of the main establishment. Now, how can you deal with a crisis without you losing your interest. And then you can change, you want to change the perception of people. Rather than giving the masses the sense of the problem, rather than giving them a source of the problem, for the masses to solve the problem institutionally, structurally, you give them something to forget about. You try to divert their sense of problem, coming from the problem, to something else. So this is something kind of a social engineering. Social engineering to deal with the problem, without changing your establishment. This is what popular culture, mainstream popular culture has done ever since 1920, or at least 1930, when the capitalistic, the model production approaches the apex, meaning the antagonism between ruling class and then the ruled became as heightened as well. So if you look at the history of the popular culture, take a look at the Hollywood, history of the Hollywood. Ever since 1920s, especially ever since 1930s, all you see is something good. Whether it's love, whether it is something, the personal kind of a story of overcoming the problem. The Hollywood deals with a lot of problems, social issues. But they never talk about the problem from structural perspective. When there's a problem, when they use problems such as the financial crisis, they talk about how an individual goes over it, overcomes it, without talking about the problem, the societal, institutional problem. So with this, you just give something to feel good about. When you talk about the pandemic, you don't talk about the way how humanity is, the way how capitalist model production has exploited not only human beings but also nature. The glove, you don't talk about that. Why? As soon as you talk about that, your source of the interest, your source of the business would be in trouble once people know it, or if people have a keen sense of problem for that. Obviously, that's against your interest. So other than giving them an exact diagnosis where the question or the problem issue comes from, they just give something to deal with, something just basically cope with, which is positivity. So especially since 2001, and also as a recent 2008 financial meltdown, the US mainstream media, you see all the good things. The theme of positivity, theme of happiness, optimism has been pervasive. It's nothing new. As soon as there's a crisis in society, establishment tries to basically brush it under the carpet. And the mainstream media culture comes into play. Because number one, people want to escape dire reality. Okay? That's why they want to see something, something good, something optimistic, something hopeful. The mainstream media industry is a part of the big, political establishment. They serve their interest. But the more the mainstream media gives you something diverted from the source of the problem, the more the problem, the structural problem lingers on. And then the more people will suffer. And this is how the crisis has been maintained and contained by the establishment. And BTS does exactly the same thing that mainstream media culture industry has done. So this picture gives you some kind of memory of if you consume the mainstream Korean media, you must have seen this picture too many times. So this picture came from their address in the UN General Assembly, September 2021. One thing they claim is the people, at least youth people, the youth, today's youth are, does anyone know what the BTS called them? Some generation. BTS called the youth today something generation. Does anyone know? Well, they claim welcome generation. That really, really pisses me off. What BTS claim, what BTS tells the youth who are suffering the most problematic situation at this time of the human history is embracing attitude. You just welcome everything. What kind of message is that? You tell youth who are suffering from all those dire reality, just forget about the dreams of getting married, giving birth to a child, getting a house. They just, BTS tells them, just welcome everything. What more? What could more can someone welcome than this dire reality? So for me, listening to their address, statement, I was really, really angry, really frustrated. I understand they are the part of the culture industry. They try to make money, they try to maintain their stakeholders' interests. I get that. But if at least they just be honest, they have to be honest. What they do and what they tell and what they are about. So, and also they are young, still they are in their 20s. I can understand they have limited understanding of the social problems and worldviews. I get that. But the biggest problem that I have is, once again, I'm not talking about BTS as individuals. I'm talking about BTS as part of the culture industry. I'm talking about the current scholarly literature scholars, researchers and scholars who celebrate BTS. So at this moment, what the current scholarly literature, what the current scholarly papers have discussed is, they claim BTS poses unprecedented success in the global popular music market, which was dominated by, Western Anglophone artists. That by itself is a great news, no question about it. But something that BTS has been successful is one thing. That claim them as counter-hegemony is totally another. You cannot just say they are posing counter-hegemony solely based upon they have accumulated, by global success than ever before. In order for you to make a claim that BTS has posed the counter-hegemony, you have to basically indicate what different worldview, what different perspective, what different basically interest that BTS poses. So briefly, even though I didn't cover everything that I prepared, which you have in front of you in the packet, it's something you can leave for later, what you can ask me later, is BTS basically reproduces, confirms, legitimates canonical American popular hegemony. And also, especially for their three pandemic songs, their messages ostensibly directed to the youth or the marginalized, oppressed. The messages in the BTS's three popular the pandemic songs is just exact repetition of what hegemonic popular industry has done long before. So for me, there's nothing counter-hegemonic. Rather, I claim the BTS is apex of the neoliberal culture industry, meaning everything that has that the mainstream media industry, popular culture industry has tried with different levels of success, BTS has excelled everything that was attempted, tested before. The most important thing that I mentioned is going back to the opening remark about the most important thing about the neoliberalism is the grand transformation of society by the logic of the market. So BTS was known for using social media 24/7. They even just made themselves available on live video on the bed when they're sleeping. So that is total erasure of previously non-marketable. And then also the BTS with alternative masculinity or femininized masculinity, which is the biggest selling point for female teenagers. They have basically reversed century-long commodification of sexualized femininity. So with neoliberalization, precarious the employment market, we have growing numbers of the precarious female employees. Even though, despite their precarity, still female workers have more disposable income, right? And then the culture industry, K-pop industry, tries to basically market those increased disposable income coming from women. So if you look at the J-pop, Japanese popular music, they started commodifying those feminized masculinity back in late 1980, early 1990. Why? At the time, Japanese economy went to bubble economy. That means all the previous permanent employment, lifetime employment of Japanese economy deceased, and all the precarity boomed up, and we have a lot of emotional, affective labor booming up, and then with that, the old Japanese woman became available for neoliberal exploitation. So with that, J-pop industry tried to market all those new disposable income coming from Japanese women, and with that, J-pop marketed Bishonen, in Korean 미소년. It was a kind of a market commodity to sell, to be sold to female workers. Now, starting with late 1990s, South Korea started to see that same phenomenon, 미소년, alternative masculinity. Not because, but yes, there are some men try to be looking soft and mild, that's for sure. Once again, I'm not talking about individuals, I'm talking about industry. Culture industry systematically and strategically market those new realm of market, newly available disposable income that was opened by neoliberal precarity. BTS does the exact same thing. If you remember the two pictures, that the one that was coming from their debut, this one. At the time, they want to market a sense of rebellion. because they're newbie in the game. They want to make a big impression. And once they realize this kind of authentic, so to speak, authentic rap, sentimentality doesn't work in the market, they change their imagery right on the bottom. This is the image coming from right after their debut performance at 2016 AMA ceremony. Why? They had a lot of market research and development. So with this new imagery, they can market themselves to more global people, to more people with more disposable income. So everything about, for me, everything about BTS is the most advanced, the cultural commodity of neoliberal culture industry that tries to market anything they deem possibly imagine. They try everything. But good thing about BTS is they have their fervent, committed, and devoted fan base who gives them all the things, all the ideas, all the possible marketable items to try out. So that is the most important thing that we have to understand. Understand BTS phenomenon not as individual artists or global artists, but as a part of neoliberal culture industry. And then going back to my central argument about whether we can find any counter-hegemonic dimensions in BTS, especially in its pandemic songs. I'm sorry, but it's true that I'm not able to find any sense of counter-hegemonic in there, in terms of their visuals, in terms of their performative tropes, messages, nothing counter-hegemonic, but the most advanced, the most sophisticated, the most fashionable development of dominant hegemony. Once again, sorry about I didn't cover anything that I prepared in this slide, but fortunately, Ms. Kang has prepared the copy of my slide in your packet. So please take a look at it, and if you have any question, if you want me to elaborate, explain anything you don't understand in there, now is a good time to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for your informative and interesting lecture. All right, it's now time to wrap up this lecture with Professor Kim. Would you give him another big round of applause? Thank you. All right, this is the end of today's meeting. I'd like to thank all of you for being here with us today. We hope to see you all again in September. Now, let us open the banquet for your dining pleasure. Please enjoy the rest of your evening, and this has been Claire Kim. Thank you very much.